and I'll do the music. Hello and welcome back to the Morningscape podcast. I am your host, DJ Mitchell, here with Matt Moody on the screen. That really just for looking at us more than anything, because we are not really going to be showing a lot today. We're not doing underdog stuff. We're going to be getting into the next phase of things, I guess, right? I mean, we're going to be getting into the daily fantasy stuff. I know we're both sweating and probably going to be looking at some news and notes and lineup stuff for preseason, which has been a lot of fun. But we're going to be getting into, I guess maybe we'll touch on preseason for like half a second, but this is mainly supposed to be more of a standalone, one of the very few podcasts we've ever done that are going to be kind of universal for all sports and kind of forever. I don't think that we're going to be going over anything that you couldn't take over to football or basketball or baseball in any capacity, but it's going to be going over DFS theory and strategy, mainly attributed to hockey, which has some differences. And then the same with prop betting. And I don't know how much money line. I mean, really, it's all going to be the same. Any betting is just prop betting is sort of like a better segue, I guess, from DFS than like saying like, oh, I really like this player, so this team should win. Like, it doesn't make as much sense as saying like, I like this player in this spot, but for these reasons. So I think he might be a good bet in some capacity. So it's going to be I think I was really excited about this idea because it's been done with other sports in a little bit, but I haven't ever really listened to much other than there's a few things I've listened to that have helped, but I don't think anyone's done one specifically to hockey. The best way to put it. So Matt, welcome in. Are you ready? I'm going to start while you give us a little intro. I'm gonna mute myself. I'm gonna get some tweets out, try to get some people in here because we can take some questions too at the end.
Hello. Yes, that is great. I am currently waiting for Colorado lines from their absolutely horrific roster that was sent to Vegas. So, we're just having the time of our lives over here in the preseason streets. You said we'd spend like a minute on preseason. I just wanted to say, obviously, if you don't click on DraftKings for any reason, there are preseason NHL slates. Everyone is the same price, which makes it a really fun sort of game of figuring out like which guys are actually playing and which guys aren't, because it's not a ton of money up top. It's just $1,000 the first, but when you click on like the contest CSV, literally like 20% of the field is just clicking, Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, like they're just clicking names because everyone's the same price. You can't build a bad team. Turns out those guys aren't playing. So it's a lot of fun for the sickos, the grinders like us. We'd be looking at this stuff anyway, so why not turn it into some a little bit of sweat during the hockey season? But setting that aside, hop in the Discord if you're not and you want to talk about DFS hockey. That's absolutely an area that we cover more in the Discord than we can really anywhere else. I'm actually tilted. Someone just took Wallstrom in a best ball draft, and I wasn't the one who took him. That's weird. But anyway, the main sort of thing that I wanted to talk about is really, when people talk, when DJ and I talk about hockey, we've sort of deviated over the years where, we started out and we were both really focused on DFS. So we'd call and, this, that, the other thing. We always talk in DFS, always had that sort of DFS mindset. And over the past couple of years, I mean, DJ, to, a pretty reasonable amount of success, has transitioned more to like the player props guy. And that has been a difficult thing to have conversations with, frankly, because the way I think about things from a DFS perspective is just inherently different. Obviously there's similarities in player projection and whatnot, but it sort of struck us when we were thinking of ways to talk about, sort of transitioning between the two and, how similar bits of information can lead to different decisions made depending on which sort of game you're trying to beat. That it would be an interesting conversation to have. Some of my favorite podcasts have absolutely nothing to do with daily fantasy sports, actual slates like I listen to pretty much everything Blender puts out. His stuff is really interesting to me from like a theory perspective, and just how to play games. And so, hopefully this can be our little contribution to that corner of the gaming space, let's call it, because this is neither a DFS show nor a betting show. But basically, just talking a little bit about how we differ between DFS and player prop betting, specifically, player shot totals, player likelihood to score, so on and so forth. So, DJ, did you do the tweets? We good to go?
Yeah, I did the tweets. I sent it in the Discord, by the way. Definitely got a lot
That's
of good
great.
people.
We had 4 talking points that we wanted to cover, and I already forgot one of them. So this should be fun.
No, yeah, I mean,
because I wrote down 3, and I don't have the 4th. So
we'll just
hopefully we hit it.
Yeah, I think that we do better when we're like a little bit looser. I don't think we ever.
Yeah, well,
I don't know. Like I feel like we've scheduled like 2 podcasts ever where we had a plan, and I feel very robotic, and I don't like it. So,
well,
yeah,
we might do better, but we also run 45 minutes longer than we hope, and I'm hoping this is not another week where I am leaving you after 2 hours after we said we would be done. So, we said we would start. So
yeah, so. I think the best, I mean, mainly what we do on this show is go over daily fantasy. So I think we're going to start there. I mean, it's definitely what got us both started with everything in general. It got the Morning Skate podcast started from just daily fantasy and the fact that there was no one doing hockey coverage. And we really enjoyed playing all the sports at the time, but hockey was very new and it felt very exploitable. And I mean, the fact I was winning regularly probably tells you enough. But no, it was one of those things where I feel like we always we're both very similar. And why we've been friends for so long is because when we find something new, we want to master it. And I think that we both kind of got into the mindset of like, how do we figure this out? And I think that's like the best way to start with anytime I talk to anyone about daily fantasy is like, this is a puzzle. This is an equation. And you're playing it against other people. So like you're trying to build a puzzle that can beat someone else's puzzle. You're trying to take the finite resources that you have, the information that we have, and use it against others. What would be called leverage. With that being said, Matt, I'll let you have something to say. You're ready to go.
I mean, we are different in so many ways. You couldn't even stop listing them. But one thing we share is that we are both obsessive. I think that's the word.
Yes. That's
our NCAA football dynasties going till 6 a.m. when we would have sleepovers because we just couldn't stop. Like we just wanted to keep building what we were working on. That comes true in this facet as well. So hopefully that shines through in the work we do. But for the most part, though, transitioning more to the topic at hand, I think really the first place that I wanted to look at was building off of your point of leverage in terms of betting and, not necessarily DFS, because I think that's a pretty, standard answer. But really, what you're trying to do in sports betting is you are literally trying to beat the sports book. Like that is what you're doing. They post a line, they can change it. So it's up to you to determine whether you play or not. You don't have the play, which obviously is not news that most people want to hear when they open up their sports book. But that's really the game you need to play. There's really no other way about it if you're trying to be profitable in the long term. And that makes it an interesting equation because that means you're only dealing in median. Median outcome is all that matters when you're doing something like a player prop, an over-under of any kind. That median is your shining light. It doesn't matter if this guy has all the upside in the world. If he puts up a 0 60% of the time, getting 10 of whatever doesn't matter. You're just frankly losing out on some value there. So that's really the fundamental difference to me in DFS versus like something like player props is that you are so much more invested in upside in ceiling cases for DFS. And to me, that's what I like. I like the the emerging superstar. I like being first to the scene on rookies. You guys have seen that time and again. I go to a random DFS podcast and the guy's 2.5K, and I'm out here touting him as, the next coming of Jesus Christ because, guess what? He'll be 2% owned. And if he's as close to as good as I think he could be, he'll be much more in that in the future. Therefore, there's a ton of relative value. However, cases like that are actually really bad in terms of sports betting because, let's be honest, when you're betting a gold prop, there's usually not a ton of value because you're not able to bet the no on most gold props. On FanDuel you can, on some books you can, but there's usually not a way to bet against the player. And if so, the spread is usually pretty massive. And then secondary to that, these are cases where we literally don't know the usage of said player. Therefore, there's so much more volatility in their sort of like inputs in their projection in how you would think about their possible outcomes. You don't need a model to tell you, a guy who shot a ton in juniors is going to shoot in the NHL. Like, you can sort of back into those things, but you just need to be cognizant of these types of things when we are dealing with sports betting. So I guess the theory of upside versus median is really why I personally prefer DFS. But DJ, I'll let you talk a little bit more about that if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying. And I think it's why I transitioned more into props as like my main focus when I'm betting, because I'm often trying to, I guess, coerce through to find the best players in. So like, I'm looking at shots a lot for daily fantasy, obviously. Like when we are playing a guy, we're thinking like, what is his maximum outcome? If they don't shoot a lot and they're not actively being involved in the offense in a shooter role, obviously it just limits their upside. And of course, on a smaller slate, you can find players that maybe don't have the highest shooting, the highest shooting ceilings that can fit in a lineup and win because, well, multiple points with the right shooter, etc. But I'm already kind of doing that research, which is why I really transitioned into props a bit more, because I'm looking for peak outcomes. So it's not too crazy to think like, well, what's the median? But again, what's the median outcome is what gets me very interested in hockey versus other sports for betting. But I mean, I'm the bigger hockey fan than any other sport, but it's more for me. It's like, I think the books are much more exploitable for props because they adjust very, very slowly to what's happening. And I don't think it takes very much guessing game to realize what's actually like what a team is trying to do. Like we see it for one game. It doesn't normally deviate a lot. And especially when there's injuries and changes, the books just do not care. They do not adjust, or they adjust very slowly. I think that obviously like money lines and stuff like that, I've gotten into just out of necessity, and I think I've gotten better at it. But I definitely think that there's an easier correlation between DFS and prop betting, except when you do one of them, you have to change your brain. You have to change your mindset when you do the other. You can't just take what you learned in one aspect and take it right over. Like you're never going to win a GPP by just saying like, all right, how can I fit in I don't know. I don't want to get too in the weeds on everything, but like if a player is really popular and people really like them, that's kind of a negative in both aspects. But if you get that really popular player early on the books, that's great. Like if you got a player, like, I don't know, let's use player X, right? Let's just use Ovechkin. Let's just make it really easy. Let's say you got Ovechkin to get over 3.5 shots, and we just got word that he is like going to get 25 minutes of ice time, right? It's like, wow, okay, like we got that really early. The books adjust later. We feel really good about it. Obviously, he's going to be very popular in DFS. So in this theory that I'm talking about, playing him or fading him becomes a whole different situation. It's not like, oh, I really liked him for the bet. Now he's also a great DFS play. He is a really good DFS play always. And we got news that made him even a better DFS play. But if he fails and his ownership just got inflated, what does that look like? So like having this kind of game theory, because now you're playing against other people. That bet you placed is against no one. It's against the book, right? You're not, but like I'm playing against other people in DFS. And that's where I think I lose a lot of people that don't really want to do both of them or don't come over the other side that I get involved with betting. People see me posting lineups and they're like, well, what are you like? How are you building? Like, what did you do? And I'm like, well, it's not as simple as just like I have a plan and I fit the plan, especially because I hand build a lot more than that. I'm trying to use every piece of information I can use to beat other people. And like that's the one point I really wanted to hammer home, probably more than anything, is like understanding and like learning about game theory. Even if you're just interested in, I mean, I mainly do it for like economic stuff and different books I read. You just it'll transition in. Like you'll just be a smarter thinker. You'll think better. You'll have more success later on when you're building lineups because you're just gonna be a better. I'm trying to think of the right word. Like you'll just inherently understand more about what you're trying to do. And I think that like if you're interested in this stuff like we are and we're obsessive about it, and you probably are if you're in our Discord and listening to this podcast and all that stuff, like I would really suggest not only thinking about it just in the terms of DFS, but like once it becomes like a mindset and a skill, it's inherent. Like you can build a lineup in 5 minutes that's better than like most of the field. And a better lineup doesn't mean that you like. I think some of the best lineups could finish near the bottom. Like if you finish near the bottom, that doesn't mean you build a bad lineup. Like that might have been an awesome build. It just didn't get there. And like,
yeah, and to be clear, we're talking about playing a GPP. We're talking about playing, a top heavy sort of tournament. Obviously, cash games do exist still. I'm waffling whether I try to handle those when the actual regular season starts. I'm taking pretty much anything I can get at like the 109 or lower level as far as cash games, just hoping to find people that are missing news in preseason. But once we get to regular season, I think we really tackle GPPs in our discussions and whatnot. In order to play GPPs, you have to know the best plays, but it's not as simple as just saying here's all the best plays now you win. That's not really how DFS works anymore, and that's what makes things interesting. The most important thing you said there was you're playing to beat the people. You're not playing to beat any singular entity. You're playing to beat a dynamic field of in hockey maybe it's hundreds or maybe it's dozens, but you're trying to beat hundreds or thousands of people in a game. And so using everything in your power to do that, to me that involves running optimizers and seeing what lineups look like. It involves trying to consume any content and seeing what like the I guess let's call them the chalky Osimo type players. Look at that lineup. Did you retweet it?
Discord and retweet.
Okay.
Just so you know.
I'm playing the rare perfect. I'm playing the rare captain goalie with 3 guys going against him just because I don't see anyone on Vegas that I like for the showdown slate. So I'm playing a couple guys not correlated on Vegas and then just playing some shot takers on Colorado, hoping that Thompson, just gets volume or whatever.
Wow.
Anyway, so let's see. Where did I leave off there?
Yeah, I didn't mean to distract you, but we have 5 minutes, and I didn't really want you to like not see that we actually got that. It seems important. No, I think first up, you're making a lot of good points. But no cash games. Thank you for Wookie for adding that. I never really talk about cash games. I like people send me head-to-heads. I literally do not play them. Like I'm not trying to be like I'm not ever trying to be mean when I do that. I'm not going to. I have no interest in playing head-to-heads. I just don't. Like I don't try to bring myself. I don't know. Maybe if I could spend more time on it and I could be better at it, but I just have no interest in like actually working on that. But and really quickly, like I do think that if you're building cash game lineups, you should be trying to like every like edge that you think. So like there's a couple different edges that we're gonna. I guess let's get into it, and we're gonna and this exists in GPP as well. It's like what your constraint of salary cap building a lineup on any of these sites, right? I mean, you're talking, FanDuel, DraftKings. Maybe there's another one that I don't know about that you're playing in Canada, because I know in Ontario it's kind of weird right now. But okay, so you have that constraint. So there's going to be a cheaper guy or two that are going to be good plays, and playing them. And sometimes there's an unbelievable. I mean, there's been times when there's literally been dramatic mispricing that we've seen across mainly FanDuel. Playing them in GPP, depending on the player, especially, is a risk that you're going to have to waver with, especially in the size of the contest. When we have mega 14 game slate, on Tuesday, it's a little bit different than a 2-gamer on a Wednesday. In cash, I don't waver as much if I ever do it again, which I haven't in a long time. You're just going to jam that guy in and hope that most of the people, because I mean, that's the one. Well, I mean, not the one, but there's a million. But one of the bigger differences between football is if we were playing NFL, person would know for sure. Not every, I mean, but like 96% of the field probably knows this edge. Where in hockey, like it's not even, I mean, we're looking at preseason and we're seeing like 40% not do. Yeah. So
there's two things. There's less contingent value in hockey. We talk about things very often like, something for season long, like Nick Backstrom's going to miss the majority of the season, if not the whole season. This means that there's a primary puck toucher position up for grabs on the Washington Capitals power play. And like, sure, that's useful information. You should give us incremental boost to a guy like Evgeny Kuznetsov, who now be the focal point of the power play across from Ovechkin, obviously, setting up Carlson and Ovi. But it also means that, a guy like Anthony Mantha should get more time on ice there. If Connor McMichael is the real deal, someone like him, should get a crack at that position. But if Ezekiel Elliott is out this Sunday and Tony Pollard is, like on, he has a functioning ACL or whatever, Tony Pollard's going to be massive chalk on DraftKings or FanDuel or wherever you're playing football, because there is contingent value like that, because there's opportunity that exists for only one, there's a condensed pool of opportunities, and that exists for hockey in a sense. But it's much more gradual, I guess. It's much more subdued, which one makes it, less valuable in aggregate. But secondary to that, it means that less people are aware of it because it's not a talking point. It doesn't really matter to that many people. So it doesn't really come up. And so you get to the situation of, maybe this makes my player prop bet like 3% better. Okay, sure. Maybe it's now a valuable bet. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Are you being that precise in your modeling of a player prop? I don't know. I really don't. Because I don't think you need to be, but we can get to that. But if you are playing DFS and this opens up a new path, a new ceiling case, a new window of opportunity, and there's nobody talking about it, that's the game. Like that is the entire game we're trying to play. James Neal night, playing with Connor McDavid in October 2019. I think like $78,000 in a night or something, because I finished like first, second, fourth, and sixth or something in some massive tournament, because I had 10 teams and 7 of them had James Neal 4-goal night at 4, 5, 6% owned. Basically, I had like 7 of the 13 James Neal teams. That wasn't like, James Neal is going to be awesome, like he's the best play. It was like, he's a guy playing with Connor McDavid that's really cheap and he should be on the top power play. So I just played a bunch of him, saying if I'm right, I have a bunch of chances to win now. And, sometimes that works. But if you're doing a player prop, that news doesn't really matter. It maybe matters a small amount, but it's not, it shouldn't really change your process in a huge way. So I think that's a long way to say that the game theory elements of DFS are much more impactful on your long-term expected value than they are, when you're doing player props, which really should be obvious, but that's a good way to summarize that, I think. Let's see. The other thing I had written down was sort of the theory behind parlays and how you can use those as sort of an upside contributor. But I don't know if you had anything else on like the median versus ceiling cases, the sort of projections, anything like that you had in mind.
Yeah, no, I'll get to a couple of little things, I guess. So going over to player props, and again, what we talk about is like you're playing against the books or a book, whatever book it is. But the thing about that is, and I think this is another thing that comes to the forefront quite often, especially in hockey, is people. It's like having sustainable winning is more than just winning most of your bets. And I think that's one thing that people just cannot grasp. It's like, if I bet 20 things and I bet 20 things that are all the books say very, very likely to happen, and I hit, 15 of them, I could still lose money depending on what I bet. And oftentimes I find people falling into a trap of being maybe scared, might be the right word, or like not having an ability to, I guess again, like it's like, what is it? Like, I think the best way to put this is if you've ever looked at any sort of a projection on a game, what are the odds a team wins from any entity, any website you use? And, I'm hoping that, and I will through Puck Luck have some of that information for you guys this season. The odds of a team winning are oftentimes not what you think they're going to be. Like, you could have Colorado playing Arizona, and yeah, Colorado should win this game.
They're definitely going to win. They're definitely going to win. That's what you hear.
Yep. Yeah. Right. And again, what does that look like? Right. What does definitely look like? It definitely probably looks like 73%, So I often, and I brought this up, before, I'm going to bring it up a million times. Like, whatever you're looking at for whatever you're using, if you're not, first off, you're not using anything when you're making bets, you're probably already, giving the book some of your money for no good reason. But just pull up what the odds are, the implied odds, and just fact check them against anything. Like I said, we're going to be having some information for sure this year to help you. But I think that's the one thing is people do not understand what they're betting. That's the first thing when you're just straight line betting anything, including props. So teams are easier because I just think the percentage of team wins versus not. And often, I mean, the famous example is if you bet every plus 300 bet and you win 3 of 10, you would actually profit. But if you did the opposite, minus 300 bet for 10 and you won 7, you would lose money. Right? It's run the math, run the understanding. And it's not about being ultra risky. It's about finding the right risk to take. I'm not saying that you can never bet a minus 300. I'm not saying that either. If there's something that actually does not make any logical sense for what the line is, yeah, maybe you can include that in some capacity. But I really try to focus on finding a line that's exploitable. And there always are in hockey. I think there are in all sports, obviously. But in hockey, I think it's even more apparent just because the books are so slow to adjust. So that's kind of the theory behind how I try to bet. And I think we have a lot more that's going to be tangible this year to use, which in the past it's been a lot more kind of putting pieces together that we have to make the full picture. And I'm hoping this year to actually have the full picture really laid out nicely for everyone by hopefully not too long into the season. And if you're able to consistently bet the right way, it's not betting the same thing every time, but it's not wavering too much. I think that in betting and in DFS, honestly, this is one thing where they really correlate nicely, is when people are wrong on something, they just fade it. They go away from it. They don't go back to it. I think that's honestly the best time to bet some of this stuff, or in DFS, especially when we see someone that should have done better. If we have a player that had a 4-shot on goal night and it was super popular and didn't score, didn't have an assist, whatever, they didn't get there. People may, I'm not saying it, I think in DFS a little bit less, but I know for sure in shot props, a player might have 8 shot attempts, 9 shot attempts. They get 2 on net, 2 off the post or something stupid. And people just say I'm done with this guy. And it's well, now his line is going to be better tomorrow or the next day or 2 days, whatever it is. I really think that is one thing that's universal, but definitely make sure that you're using something when you're betting, and not only using something when you're betting, but understanding before you click that bet, before you click that in. And I think that that's one thing that we really don't see often. Yeah. And I think DFS people understand it really well, because DFS people that play DFS are often looking at the range of outcomes. And they're like, well, what happens in this situation? And that's why I'll play Jake Allen against Tampa, because I'm okay, how different can I get with a guy, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need to get beat down the door too much on everything I'm saying. But Matt, I'll pass to you because I know you were kind of ready to say something and I just kept talking.
Yeah. It comes back to the point of what you're playing for. And when you're betting, you're playing for value. You're not playing to be right. Like you said, if you want to be right, you could find over, 1.5 goals and bet it at minus 700 for each game. And then you could say you went 8 for 8 tonight and you risked, $10,000 to make whatever, like 900 in profit. And guess what? If one of those misses, then you lost money on the night. Like,
Yep.
sure, you could do that. And I'm sure books would happily take your money because you're likely going to run into a 1-0 game at some point and, lose your money. But you're simply just playing a value based game, and your like assertion as a human, humans are really bad at probabilities just inherently. So
And the
I couldn't tell
and
you
yeah,
I
and the
couldn't
books make
tell
it
you the
harder
difference.
because they don't give you a probability you've ever seen. They don't they are like, remember all the math you learned growing up that you sucked at because it was really annoying to do like fractions and decimals. Like we're gonna make it even harder now. We're gonna give you plus 150. Like figure out what that means. So like I mean every time I look up the word O, it just automatically says like, you mean odds checker, right? Because I coded that every time. And like I'm to the point where most of the time I can kind of run through it a little bit. Like I know what I'm
Yeah.
looking at pretty much because again, like just the more repetition
Yeah.
of doing
And
things. But yeah,
yeah, that's a good one. Just being cognizant of those general numbers is really good when you're scrolling a sports book and you don't have a data scraping operation. You don't have a bot that's finding the lines and putting them in Excel, and then if you're trying to do things just based on your own knowledge and putting together like shot rates and recent game shot attempts and things like that, which are entirely valid ways to go about collecting data and processing them in your brain. The final step is comparing that to the actual value that you are trying to define, which is literally in this case value. And in DFS, it's a bit easier to sort of cheat and just say, correlation and upside case means that this shaky play is actually fine, which is true. It's provably true, but you
yeah.
don't get that luxury in sports betting. So the last thing that I think I wanted to talk about was the sort of idea behind like parlays and round robins, because obviously if you're a sports bettor you probably know what those are, but I will admit that when I'm betting on stuff, especially hockey stuff, that is 99, maybe 95% of the time what I'm doing. um, because frankly I play DFS because I want to turn a little bit of money into a largish amount of money in hockey, or in other sports a very large amount of money. And so it's sort of like, why would I bet, $700 across 10 different lines, just to get, in an ideal world, to get a $700 profit back or whatever, basically the idea being that you need to be really disciplined, really rigorous with your process in order to make money over the long term sports betting. So I go, okay, well then I'm just going to donk things off rather than spending all this time refining my process, like like DJ will do, and showing receipts of every bet I place and tweeting about it, and proving why each of them are a good bet, so on and so on. I like, personally, how I do it is I go in on a 10 game NHL slate and I'll do my DFS research, and I'll know, the spots where guys are getting artificial boosts in time on ice or power play usage or whatever. And I'll grab some hot take ish things that I like to happen. Oh, this rookie's, his gold prop, whatever. And I'll round robin these things, 10 lines. I might be able to turn, 150 total dollars bet into 10 grand if everything hits.
Right.
And obviously it's very rare that that happens, but to me, that's a more appealing way to do things. There's less fronting of the money. Like there's less risk taken in terms of actual dollars. In terms of expected value, I don't think there's much of a difference. So, that's something to at least consider if you've maybe you live in Ontario and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do this hockey season. I'm deeply sorry for those people. And if you are listening, I thank you much for still coming back, even though you can't play DFS. But like you can do things that sort of attack upside in that way without, necessarily, going through the grind of it, I would say. And not to say that you don't care about value, but I think as long as you have that inherent understanding of value, then you can just sort of turn the dial of volatility to where you're comfortable, and doing so is making parlays, making round robins, things like that. And also check out, Underdog and Prize Picks for those lines as well, because those are even more, opportunities to sort of get the same level of upside for placing relatively few, player prop type bets.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and with everything you said, and using a site like Underdog or using a site like Prize Picks and Monkey Knife Fight or whatever the heck the other one is that I never use, like you normally, and I know that some of the books have adjusted it. Like I know Prize Pick adjusted it, but like you can get the same upside in payout with correlated things like a shot on goal versus a goalie save, which isn't really as correlated as you might think, and like it is correlated. Like if a player has more shots on goal, the goalie is saving them, hopefully, maybe not. But you can actually do those things without paying a premium, which you just aren't allowed to do on DraftKings. I don't even think you can do them in same game parlays. But yeah, I do think that there's value in that, obviously. But I really think that like what you said, and you almost think like, and this is the thing that I started getting to at the end of the year, and I'm gonna definitely start the year hammering home, is the understanding like what is the best bet in this game, right? Because when you're doing a parlay, you can't put like 3 players in the same game together. So like trying to take and like use every resource you have, which again, I don't want to hint away at too much stuff, but I really hope that we're going to have a ton of incredibly, like I would say the most useful stuff that you could ever imagine. Hopefully by I'm hoping by not too long into the year it exists, but let's not get carried away. But anyways, the best line in a game doesn't have to be a shot on goal. It doesn't have to be, but I wouldn't get carried away either and say like, oh, the best line is this player to score because he's in the first line. It's like, well, don't add a ton of risk to your parlay portfolio. Like I know the payout will go way up, but like, I don't know. And like, I find a lot of times that people will only post up, like, they're like, oh, like this is my goal prop parlay. And it's like, okay, yeah, like I get what you did here. I see that these are 3, but like, you don't have to do that. Like you don't have to say like, oh, this is my shot on goal parlay. And this is only goals, and this is assists, and this is money lines, and then this is goalie saves. And it's like, yeah, like you don't have to do that. Like none of these things are correlated events. Like a player having more shots on goal in the Buffalo Columbus game does not affect a player having more shots on goal in Washington versus Philadelphia. Like that, they don't matter. They're completely separate. So like, don't ever, and that's one thing I really wanted to point out. And I know it doesn't correlate at all with DFS, but yeah, I that's one thing I kind of wanted to get to. So like making sure when you're doing these parlays that you can be exploitative in any way you want. Okay. And don't pigeonhole yourself to one of them is something I wanted to get to, as well as just like understanding the risk you're putting into it. So like adding a player that's like minus 250, like see what that changes. Like take like, especially when you have pieces like that, if you have a ton of them, probably look at the payout, see if you even like it, but take that minus 250 out and see what the payout is. And then like put him back in maybe if you want. But I oftentimes find that those lines are not very exploitable because a player missing on a shot on goal type of thing is a bit more random than I would like them to be. So yeah, I do think that it's all about, I mean, everything is calculated risk in parlays in general. And when you can use a site like Underdog Fantasy, promo code MSP, and you can actually use correlated factors together, it does help. But make sure, this one thing I really want to hammer home all year is that you understand what you're betting, understand the odds, and that when you're parlay building, you're siphoning parlays into different categories. It's just not necessary. I've been trying to do it more successfully in football, and I've been closer. I think that like getting that 14 game hit is almost impossible, but like I actually had one that was pretty freaking good on week 2, and I was like, see, this is why I do it, because like the best line doesn't have to be a specific player prop. Yeah, Matt, any thoughts on that? What I just said there, or pretty much
maybe probably as like almost as like a foil to that, just using DFS as my frame of reference. Crap, what was the actual thing I was going to say? See, this is why I like scripted things, because then I don't have a complete blank.
Was it about? I don't even know odds.
This is really exciting. It's about I got it. It's back. And so the corollary, or opposite maybe in DFS is a projection, and everyone has really good projections. Like any site that you go to, like yeah, you can quibble with some players and they're missing this thing, but they're pretty good. And what's really interesting to me about this season, and that I've sort of been learning over time, is just how predictable like the field is going to be in these cases where like there's clearly a best projected type play, a best projected team, and just sort of like rooting around trying to find those cases in other games. um, it doesn't, in betting, it doesn't matter what happens between game. If McKinnon goes for 8 shots or 1 shot, it doesn't impact the value you get on if McDavid goes for 4 shots or 2 shots. But if McKinnon goes for 10 shots in DFS and you have McDavid, it actually does matter, because then your path to victory just got that much harder. And so sort of knowing that and finding ways to sort of gamify like that aspect too, is something else that, like, as projections get more and more prevalent, it actually sort of makes things a bit more predictable from, like, if you're thinking about things as like at a holistic level. So that's something that I think is very uh, interesting to me, not interesting to 99.9% of the population. Hopefully half of you listening to this qualify into the like interesting, perspective that you wouldn't otherwise consider. But that's another key difference, I think, and frankly another reason why I like DFS more personally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is more fun to beat like a few thousand people than it is to beat the books. Yeah, no, yeah, this is honestly Wookie bringing it up. There's a lot of good plays that don't get played because of projections. Like that does exist. I try my best when I'm building lineups to like factor it in, but try to like I would rather bet. I would rather make a lineup that I feel like is, I don't even know how to word this. Like I don't think that like I think using projections is obviously incredibly important, and understanding how to build a lineup in general, we'll get to in more of a DFS discussion. And like, there's a lot of heuristics that I think are important when you're using, but I don't abide by like, I definitely don't personally think that like running. I figured it out exactly what I want to say. If you're not max entering, if you're not entering a plethora of lineups, if you're only building a few lineups and you're just throwing in like the best play type of thing in like 2 or 3 builds, like that's when I don't really agree with that strategy. Like, especially in a massive GPP, going against a bunch of projections, like getting to that win, you need to be a bit unique. And I think in hockey, it's easier than any other sport because like ownership is, like you're saying, it's not too hard to course through and figure out, or at least be somewhat close to it. So I would definitely be a bit on, I'm more on the GPP build weird and build different while still using the heuristics like correlation and, massive slates. I don't play a bunch of guys against my goalie, although that can win. I guess we've seen it before. Yeah. Okay, hold on. We got actually a good question here, Matt.
One summary of that last point was the idea that it's Bales or Drew Dinkmeyer or Mike Leone or someone, but the idea being, how can I win with the lowest possible score? Like, it doesn't, if you play the best plays and everyone scores or whatever, you're still going to have a hard time winning. So why not actually give yourself an easier path to winning and say, how can I win with the lowest score possible? And that's sort of a good way to think about your lineups. If you're playing all 20% on plays, it's really tough to create that separation and win with a low score on a night where the chalk fails or whatever. So that's it. What do you guys think remains the biggest edge in GPPs? I mean, to me, because I spend so much time sort of formulating my own very informed opinions based on scouring beat writers and things like that, I think it's the level of understanding these relative newcomers to the game. The guys like Timo Meyer, who we've been banging the drum on for 4 years or however long he's been in the league, where now he's like a top 5 like season long fantasy guy. And, we're able to see that ahead of time because, we know these juniors profiles. We know things that a projection system frankly doesn't need to know because it's good enough to make money. It's good enough to have projections and use it intelligently and make money. But you can still beat it if you're sort of self-originating some things. And I think that's something that DJ and I provide a lot of useful info on. Sometimes it doesn't work, but I think having those general strong stances when there's relatively little information available at the NHL level is always something that we're going to derive our edge from. And hopefully listeners of Morningsgate podcast can derive some edge from themselves in terms of listening to us and saying, okay, I like that reasoning. I don't like that reasoning, and sort of, going along with us when they feel it's appropriate. So that to me is the answer, but interested if you have a different thought.
No, I think that's a really good one. I wasn't actually thinking about that until you started saying it. I'm like, oh, that's a really good point because like,
we almost made it to the end of the show and then DJ froze. That's awesome. Let's see. What do we think DJ was going to say?
Did you lose me?
You're back. You're back.
Okay.
You basically start from the beginning.
I don't know where I left off. No, what I was saying is that I do think that I wasn't going to go down that path. And I'm glad you brought that up because I do think that's like a massive edge in general. Because again, getting ahead of those projections, getting ahead of the curve, and being right on a player first is really valuable in every sport. And like, I think it's universal. Like in football and stuff like that, it's a lot harder because a lot of people know more or less, I guess, like there's not as many like up and comers that come out of nowhere. You know what I mean?
Every hot take in football has been had.
Yeah.
You can find a guy that'll tell you Mac Jones is the best quarterback in the NFL. There's not that cottage industry in hockey that sort of leads to these different pockets having different stances. Like everyone's kind of fishing out of the same projections bowl in hockey for the most part. And so that's why I think that I personally have had, years of like, not like life-changing successes, but like solid success where I've made money in all but one of the last 7 seasons. Like it's just one of those things where, I don't think it's this massive thing, but incrementally here and there, it's worth it to sort of have put in that work and, I enjoy it. So that's,
I think that, it's honestly, it's a good question. It's just like, to me, it's like all of the edges add up to a big edge. Like that is one of them. But I think just in general, like there's so many people that don't even know what they're doing at all in hockey. And some people that are very much, still way behind the very basics curve, especially, I mean, maybe my preseason brain is factoring in too much, but like just in general, like using your flex as the last player in, that's the most expensive. That's an easy one, right? That's an easy edge that still exists that I think doesn't exist in other sports. It does exist in other sports we see, but like using that edge, I think that in general, playing the later games is just an edge that exists as well because people don't do it. Like, I don't know how to explain the ownership just never gets there at the 10:30 games. And factoring in, like, just another little thing is, like, if you're playing those late games and there's any changes that you can capitalize on, no one else can. So I oftentimes when I'm building, my 5 or 10 lineups, whatever I'm building, like, I'm not forcing it in if there's no reason to, but, like, I oftentimes really do look at those last games as closely as I can and see if, like, there might be an edge to be had. And if there's a change that could come up, and you find little edges like that. I think another one is just like not falling a trap to, because a player is really good at hockey, they're a really good DFS player. And I find that often as well. Like we see players that do not shoot that much that still get a lot of ownership. And I don't think you can't play them. It's just like, I think understanding what, like, the roster you're building, having the upside that you wanted to have, isn't always the case for everyone. Knowing the power play lines, I know that you mentioned like the news and everything, but people just don't know and they don't factor it in. And building a correlation through power play and line one, power play one is just inherently going to be a bit better. So like there's a bunch of little things that add up. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna second the late games late swap entirely. That's any DFS sport, but knowing
Yeah.
having the I guess having just the attention to detail or the engagement with what you're gambling on to play, the 7 o'clock start, and you go in at 9:45, and guess what? The Leafs failed, whatever. Florida chalk
Mhm,
smashed, and you
mhm.
were over on the Leafs. Knowing that you need to make up those points, even to just get a min cash, and saying, okay, well, I can't play, I can't play Kevin Fiala because he's going to be 21% against the Coyotes. I need to play a 4% owned Clayton Keller or whatever. Just
Yeah.
doing things like that to sort of salvage your night. People aren't doing that.
No.
Maybe it works in the other way too, where you had the Galbrain lineup where you stacked Montreal and Arizona. It just happened. Say you're using an optimizer and you maybe chunked it a bit, and all of a sudden Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki at 5% combined ownership go for 70 points. That could happen. Cole Caulfield
Yeah.
gets a hat trick, Suzuki gets 4 points and a goal or whatever. Sure, not likely, but it could happen. And then you're sitting there with this really low owned Arizona stack, and you say, oh, well, actually, Kevin Fiala, like I have the stones right now. I could play Fiala, Kempe, whatever. So just having that, I keep saying attention to detail, but just the literally like making an effort in late swapping is just so valuable. And in any sport, you'll hear people talking
Yep.
about how people don't do it, and people still don't do it because guess what? They go to bed, they put the kids to bed, they get lazy, they want to spend time, watching a show or
Yeah.
whatever.
Be with your
Um,
family like a bunch of nerds. Good call.
but that's the
I'm
game.
kidding.
I'm sorry.
I know. No,
That's
I
the
know. But
game.
yeah, you're trying
That's
to
the
beat
game we
them. I
play.
no, I totally agree. It's like you're like again, like it's not. Yeah. No, I
Okay,
had to make the joke.
let's
Yeah.
I
Well, I
think
was
we can
just gonna
close this
say.
out.
Yeah. I just really the last thing I wanted to say on that is like change your mind all the time. And like if you're not changing your mind on things and you're not taking in information and being open to change in all of betting and all of fantasy and all of DFS, you're not going to do well. And a lot of times people are very apprehensive to say, I'm gonna like, especially like I don't know, even if you're not like, I think for another thing, just to piggyback on the failing, it might not look like you're completely failing when you're failing. Like like that is something maybe we could go over later about like when to make those changes because some people might be asking now like, well, when do I know if I need to change my lineup? But being open to say like, all right, I suck tonight, and I'm now going to get crazy is a hard step to take. And I do really want to say it's a really, really good one in every single sport, no matter what. Yeah, I think that's good. Let's get to the final stuff. You're right.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm the person to say when you're failing on
Yeah,
something
it's
because
kind of hard. Yeah, it is. I
um
was thinking like when you said that, it's like my next question would be like, well, how do I know when that happens? And it's like,
yeah.
well, I guess and yeah,
I will play Daniel Sprong every damn slate if he's on Seattle and get zero
yeah,
fantasy points and love it, and then he'll score all of his goals on the fourth line and whatever if he makes the team. I don't know, but
yeah.
there's guys like that I certainly maybe ride it a bit too far before I jump off the train. So I don't know that I'm the best
Yeah.
saying
I mean,
here's why you're wrong and this is why you do it, but
no.
yeah, maybe.
I know. No, but
Okay.
again, like I don't think that you're like I know like the inability to change thing that I just said is like you might not want to get off a player right away, but like sticking to it with a player that should be doing better is fine. It's not like a player type of thing. It's like you build the lineup that you really like, and you're now need to make that massive adjustment because getting to min cash. And just, honestly, just like really quickly to break it down, it's like let's say that you need to get 40 points to get to min cash, right? Well, a lot of other people are also going to be getting more points. So if you have the same players as most of the field, you're never going to make up those points because everyone else is also going to continue to gain points as you do, and you're never going to catch up, right? That I just wanted to kind of make that point a bit clearer. Whereas if you swap to someone that,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
again, it's not swapping to
I
like, yeah, you're not
yes,
swapping to a fourth line grinder. You're swapping to the best players on a team that no one's playing, like
yes,
Arizona against Colorado.
I
Yeah,
once swapped I think 2 years ago in the playoffs. I swapped a Vegas Colorado late night hammer because I sucked early, and Riley Smith went for like 5 goals, and I had a one-off Riley Smith, and I thought he'd be like 25%. He ended up being like whatever 8%. Scored like either 4 or 5 goals literally, and I would have won a GPP with him, and instead I didn't even cash. So I am good at that. I'm good at saying, all right, this night's a complete failure, changing everything. And then sometimes I'm right. Sometimes I'm horribly, horrifically, tragically wrong. So,
Yeah.
Yes, Wookie. Daniel Sprung did score last night, and I had none of him. And I played freaking Shane Wright's 13 minutes of time on ice, thinking that they would show off their shiny new toy. I'm just terrible at this. But
no, preseason's been it's been up and down. But yeah, we'll get out of here. So I think there's a lot of takeaways that you can have. Hopefully you learned something, but definitely the number one difference, not even difference, just like the mindset. Let's just really quick, let's not even say difference. The mindset you need to have with betting is more median based, and it should be based around math, understanding the odds, and being exploitative with pricing. No matter what it is, be open to all of the different odds and be open to, what the best play is. And like I said, we'll have stuff going out with that. And then Matt, for DFS, what main takeaways do you want to give to people?
To be reactive to the field, to be perceptive of the field. That's really important. I think, like gone are the days where you can just live in a silo and come up with your own ideas and expect to win, frankly, by playing what you deem the best plays, and being and not playing afraid to lose on a given slate. A lot of times, the most frustrating slate is when you spread yourself a bit too thin and you go, oh, I love this guy, and then you look and you had 12% of him, and because guess what, it's a 160-day marathon. Each slate you can play however many lineups you want, but you're going to get 100 plus slates to play. So why not sort of go in and, profit when you're right. And, basically not being afraid to fail is a really good way to approach a DFS versus sports betting, where I think you should be terrified of failing, because the payoffs are not, they're not outsized in the way that they are for DFS.
No, I wouldn't say terrified of failing. I would say, if you have no strategy and you're just randomly betting things that you like, and you're going to pay the books what they want you to pay them. If you are taking calculated risks over time, you will be profitable if you're using anything. And if you're using literally nothing, then all the power to you. I mean, thank you for, I guess, keeping the industry alive. I don't even know.
So thank with you all for that, building the sports book that I enjoy my Sundays at or whatever.
So with that being said, number one, puckluck.com. You can go there. There's gonna be a ton of stuff coming for hockey betting. So if you need to find a home that's gonna have stuff that I guess isn't very popular, but B, it's all new. But I really think that the modeling that we're doing there is going to be really, really. I know, Matt, you're not really involved with it, but maybe you will be a little bit. We'll see. But yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot of different stuff for money lines, props, anything you're going to want in that capacity over at puckluck.com coming this season. For football specifically, if you're looking for something because you don't have anything, 1 week season, promo code MSP, I'll give you $20 off a yearly subscription. Ownership projections are pretty solid. And I think if you already have some ownership projections, having 2 is better than 1. I really do think that because they are often very different. Also, they have prop Discord. So I think with football betting, and I made a tweet about it, is that the best way to be profitable in football is like we said for hockey, is like having something to use, but you need to beat everyone else to the punch in football because they adjust very, very quickly when money comes in on the line. And that Discord for 1 week season is awesome and helped me a lot. I missed all of them today, but I'm sure they're all going to hit. What are you going to say?
And since we've, we're both OWS subscribers and we've both finished second in large field single entry tournaments this season, and it's only week 3. So
that's true. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I forgot. I did
hashtag screenshot life or whatever.
I know. I wasn't going to tweet it, but then I had the idea about like hockey season's coming. Like, I don't know. It was fun. I shouldn't have done it, but I made like $6,700 over the weekend. So I need to buy a new laptop. And lastly, Underdog Fantasy promo code MSP.
Yes, get in there.
A week left of best ball drafting. I think we need to get about 17 or 18 drafts per day to reach the summit of filled. And I think we're going to be pretty close, but I think we'll get there. Honestly, I think the drafts are filling fast enough to make me feel good about it. Yeah, I think that's probably it, unless if you had anything else.
No, let's get on out of here. You can probably find us next week, where we'll maybe start doing maybe a training camp roundup, saying like if there's guys who look like they'll make the big club that are relevant, because one, that's a DFS relevant thing, but two, that's also relevant for these late, last minute sort of best puck entries. So I think that would be a good topic. And of course, if you guys have any questions and things for us to discuss on future shows, we'd love to hear from you, be it Twitter or in the Morningscape Discord. So we have now just about hit the hour mark. So I will close this out, DJ. Good. All right. So from Doug, from DJ, from myself, thank you for listening. Have a good preseason slate, everybody, and we will see you.